Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next part of our look at the Disney Lorcana TCG comprehensive rules. If you haven't checked out the other parts, feel free to check them out. Today we'll be going over chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5 is very short. It is cards, and it has one section just talking about conditions. Let's take a look at it. So, 5.1.1 states, cards enter play ready. A player can't use any of an exerted card's abilities that include an exertion as part of the cost. Let's take a look at this card here, Pluto Friendly Pooch. Right now, Pluto is in a vertical position. This means he is ready. If he has this symbol on his effect, that means that I must exert as part of the cost. If he's exerted, I can't use that effect. He has to be able to go from ready to exerted to do this symbol. Now, 5.1.2 says exactly that. When the card's exerted, it's turned sideways. A player can use an exerted card's abilities that don't require an exerted symbol as part of the cost. Let's look at that in practice. We're going to look at this card right here, Kuzco Selfish Emperor. Kuzco Selfish Emperor's second effect says, for 4 ink, your other characters gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. So as long as I have 4 ink, I'm able to say, I'm going to use Kuzco Selfish Emperor's effect. I'll pay 1, 2, 3, 4, and my other characters will gain resist +1. And you can do that as many times as you like, as long as you can pay the cost. But for Pluto, unfortunately, because he has the exerted symbol, once he's exerted, that effect is done. 5.1.3 and 5.1.4 go over damage characters. Any character that has damage on it, any amount of damage, is considered damaged. Any card with no damage on it is considered undamaged. And this is important for certain effects, such as with this card here, Tropical Rainforest. Tropical Rainforest states opposing damage characters gain Reckless. So if this is my board, and that's my opponent's board, nobody has Reckless right now. Pluto now has Reckless. Kuzco now has Reckless. Now nobody has Reckless. Any amount of damage will make damage character effects apply to them. And congratulations, Chapter 6. Chapter 6 talks a little bit more about the specific cards that we see. Let's go back and take a look at characters. We're going to go back and take a look at our friend Kuzco. At least I thought we would. Let's go ahead and actually go back to him. Wonderful. Let's take a look at our wonderful friend Kuzco. Characters are a type of card that can be in play. A character card that's in the play zone is a character. In all other zones, it's a character card. Characters don't list character on their classification line, which will be this line right here. It doesn't say character in the same way that Tropical Rainforest says location. It just shows the card itself. But a character is defined by one of two things. A character has a value of strength and willpower. Additionally, a character has at least one of the following listed on their classification line. And there's a long list of things that could be there. We see that Kuzco here, he has 3 strength and 5 willpower. And he has classifications of Storyborn and King. He fits both of the requirements, and therefore he is a character. Now, only characters can quest or challenge. Tropical Rainforest cannot quest, Whole New World cannot quest, Mally's Fish cannot quest, and neither of the 3 can challenge either. But Kuzco, assuming that he is able to do so, assuming that he is dry and able to do things, he can challenge and he can quest. A character must have been in play at the beginning of the set step of their player's turn in order to quest, challenge, or use exertion as a part of their cost. So let's say we start turn 1. We're going to go ahead and go, okay, starting the game, I'll go ahead and I will ink Cusco. I will spend 1 to play Nala, and at this point, I can't quest with Nala. I can't challenge with Nala. All I can do is just pass turn. Opponent's turn goes. My turn begins. Okay, ready, set. We're going to make sure everything's ready. Set. At this point, Nala becomes dry. That means that once I enter my main phase, I can quest, I can challenge. If she had an effect, I could exert to use that effect. But now, she is ready to do everything she is able to do. But it must be on your side of the field at the beginning of the set step. 6.2 goes over the parts of the card. There's a fun diagram here, but no worries, we've got our own. 6.2.1 states most parts of a card appear on all card types. Specific differences are noted in the entry for the relevant card type. 6.2.2 is the art. The art isn't used for gameplay. It's just to make cards look nice. We can see, okay, there's Cusco. Uh-oh, what's he up to? It doesn't affect gameplay at all, but is also helpful for people to recognize what card is what. If anyone's ever played with text proxies, it can be difficult to track sometimes without pictures. 6.2.3 states the ink type. The ink type of the card identified by the ink type symbol, which will be right here in this little area, but also color-coded as well. The colored bar behind the card's name reflects the associated color. A card's ink type is important for building a deck and may be referenced in the card rules. Right here we have a small ink key, and we'll go over them up on the screen too. The 6 ink types are amber, are amethyst, emerald, ruby, sapphire, and steel. As we said earlier, when you're building a deck, in standard rules, you're only allowed to use 2 ink colors. So I could choose, I like to run ruby and amethyst. Ruby and amethyst. I can choose to run, let's say, sapphire and amethyst. I can choose to run steel and amber. But I can't choose to run steel, amber, and amethyst. That would be too much. So we're only limited to the 2. The name. The name of the card appears in larger print. An effect that looks for a card or character with a specified name looks only at this line and ignores the version, which is the smaller line. The whole character or location name must be the same as the specified name to be a match. A character's or location's name and version together constitute its full name. Let's take a look at some examples of this. Right here, we have a card named Bruno Madrigal Undetected Uncle. This card has an effect that states you can exert him to name a card, then reveal the top card of your deck. If it's the named card, put that card into your hand and gain 3 lore. Otherwise, put it on the top of your deck. Now we note it does not state the full name, it just states the name. That means that as long as the name, which is the big name, is the same, we get the card. So if I'm playing this card, we'll clear up our board a little bit. Bruno Madrigal will be on the field, and I say, okay, I declare Peter Pan. Exert for cost, look at the top card. Oop, we have Peter Pan, Neverland Hero. I can add that to my hand, and I will gain the 3 lore. Next turn. Let's say we draw something else, and then, okay, I'm going to use the effect again. Exert for cost. I declare Peter Pan. We have Peter Pan Shadowfinder. Great. We gain the 3 lore. Good, and get the card in our hand. Turn passes. We draw some other card. Okay, I use the effect again. I exert for cost. I declare Peter Pan. Peter Pan's shadow is what we draw. Do I still get the 3 lore? The answer is no. And that's because Peter Pan's shadow, while it includes the word Peter Pan, does not have the same name as Peter Pan. It instead is a completely different character named Peter Pan Shadow. So I would only get the effect of Bruno Madrigal to call the name, get 3 lore, and add it to my hand if I state Peter Pan Shadow. Then that would be valid. I put it in my hand, I get the 3 lore, we are all fine and dandy. But the biggest thing is that the versions are not important in the case of effects like these. Let's learn a little more about the versions. Editing this part in as well, there are subsections of some interesting parts. Right here is a card called Flotsam and Jetsam. 6.2.4.1 states, some characters have 2 names. These characters have an ampersand between the 2 names listed on the names card. So if we pull it up here, we'll see we have Flotsam and Jetsam. If an effect looks for a card or character with a specified name, the specified name only needs to match one of the 2 on the character. A character with multiple names is still a single character. Let's go back to our Bruno situation. We say, uh-oh, we need to find Bruno Madrigal. Okay, exert for cost, I declare Jetsam. I draw the card. Oh, Flotsam and Jetsam. Do I get the 3 lore? Yes, because I declared Jetsam. Even though Flotsam is there, this is considered both Flotsam and Jetsam. So I'll get the card to my hand, and I will gain the 3 lore. However, it is important to note that a character, even if they have multiple names, they still are a single character. Let's say Flotsam and Jetsam are in the library. The library states, whenever a character is banished while here, you may draw a card. Flotsam and Jetsam are banished. How many cards do I draw? The answer is just 1, because even though they have 2 names, they are still 1 character. So I will draw 1 card. 6.2.5 goes over the version, which we've already talked about. They differentiate cards with the same name. A character's, the location's name, and version together constitute its full name. Now, classifications. I pulled up a different card here. This is Shenzi Head Hyena. We can look at her bottom line right here and see that there are 3 classifications. We have Storyborn, Ally, and Hyena. Now, some card effects will reference these, and you'll have to look to see if they match the criteria. Let's take a look at these 2 Shenzi cards. Shenzi's first effect states, this character gets +1 strength for each other hyena character you have in play. So we look, okay, Shenzi, how many other hyenas are on play? Just the one, the other Shenzi. So Shenzi gains +1 strength. So she now is a 4/6 character. Other Shenzi, okay, how many other hyenas do I have? Oh, just the other one. I'll gain the 1. She is also 4/6. And the second effect, what have we got here? Whenever one of your hyena characters challenges a damaged character, gain 2 lore. So let's say that the knock is on my opponent's field. And let's say that the knock has 1 damage on it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have Shenzi challenge the knock. Exert. We calculate, okay, Shenzi gains 1 from the other hyena in play. That means Shenzi will do 4 damage. And if we look at the knock, we'll get a cleaner version for us right here. The knock has 5 strength and 5 willpower. and there's no other effects on board, so we'll say, okay, the knock will take 4 damage. Boom. And Shenzi will take 5 damage. Boof. Game state check let me fix this, because they had 1 damage, so they will now take 5 damage. Game state check happens. Okay, Shenzi has 6 willpower, has 5 damage counters, so Shenzi stays on board. The knock has 5 damage counters and 5 willpower. Uh-oh. The knock goes. Oh no. Shenzi's effect activates, which will state that if they challenged a damaged character, you'll gain 2 lore. So since the knock was damaged when the character was challenged, that means Shenzi will gain 2 lore, or the player that owns Shenzi will gain 2 lore. It's important to note in situations where it says challenging, the character does not have to be banished for that effect to happen. Let's pull up our friend Triton. Triton is a wonderful card that has 7 strength and 9 willpower. Let's say Triton has 1 damage on it, and I decide, okay, Shenzi, we're going to go ahead and hit into Triton. We exert to denote that we're going to challenge. Shenzi will do 4 damage because there is another hyena, and Shenzi will have 7 damage on her. Game state check. Shenzi has 7 damage counters, but only 6 willpower, so Shenzi, boop, banished. Triton is not banished because he only has 5 counters on him. However, because Shenzi challenged a damaged character, you still gain the 2 lore. The next part, 6.2.7, states the card cost. Shenzi here costs 5. Note that as we explained earlier in the video, a card's cost does not change. Shenzi will always be a 5 cost character. Now, the amount of ink that you pay can change depending on card effects. Let's go ahead and find our wonderful friend Pluto that has been so helpful for us for the duration of this video. There he is. Let's say that I have Pluto on board and I've exerted him to use his effect. Should probably have a special window for Pluto just because we've been going back to him so much. But he's such a helpful card because he does a lot of the things we need him to. Pluto's exerted. I can pay 1 less ink for the next character I play this turn. I say, okay, I'm going to play Shenzi. I'm going to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, and have the effect of Pluto go off to play Shenzi. Shenzi's still a 5 cost character, but to pay for Shenzi, I've used 4 of my ink and then had 1 count because of Pluto's effect. Therefore, I can play Shenzi onto the board. Let's keep going and look at the inkwell symbol. Actually, great setup we have here because Shenzi has this inkwell symbol. We have the swirl icon that is present around the card's cost. This card can be put into the player's inkwell. Cards in the inkwell are referred to as ink. Each card counts as 1 ink. So if I'm at the start of my turn, I can say, okay, I'm going to ink Shenzi and place her in my inkwell. As soon as Shenzi is in here, she's no longer Shenzi. She is ink. And I cannot find Shenzi naturally. I cannot, say, okay, this is Shenzi right here. It is just ink. And ink is ink. It doesn't have any specific thing. It counts as 1 ink for other card effects. Now, if we look at Pluto, Pluto does not have the swirl icon. That means that I cannot naturally place Pluto in my inkwell. If I said, okay, I'm going to ink for turn, I'm going to ink Pluto, that would be an illegal move. And we'd have to revert play back to before I did that. Let's look at the two other symbols. 6.2.9 is strength. We saw here earlier that Shenzi had 3 strength. Primarily, this is how much damage the character deals in a challenge, though card effects can also reference this value. Strength only appears on characters. If a character will deal damage equal to its strength, and it has 0 or less strength, it deals no damage. So Pluto right here has 0 strength. If we don't have any effects, they can technically challenge, but they will do 0 damage. Willpower is stating that the damage on a character is persistent, which means it accumulates over the course of the game. If a character has damage equal to or higher than their willpower, they are banished as a required action. Card effects can also reference this value. So what this means is that the willpower is the shield symbol right here. And this means that it's essentially similar to how health would be. A card cannot have more damage counters than its willpower. We saw this in the earlier examples with Shenzi's effect. Shenzi can have up to 5 damage counters on her while still being able to stay on the field. We have 5 damage, but Shenzi has 6 willpower, so Shenzi stays on. What the first part of this states is that the damage is persistent. You don't heal over time. Even if Shenzi stays on board the entire game, ready, not being affected by anything, they will always have that 5 damage counters on them. There can be card effects that can heal, that can remove damage counters, but they do not go off naturally. If a card leaves play, the damage counters are taken off. And once they reach a number equal to or greater than their willpower, they are banished during the game state check as a required action. 6.2.11 is the lore value. Cards can have many different amounts of lore. We see Pluto here. He has 1 lore value, which is the amount the player gains when they quest. And the appearance of the lore value symbol may vary on some cards, but they don't really affect gameplay. We haven't seen this too much other than some promotional cards, and one particular card, Mirabelle Madrigal, who I don't own. But she just has a symbol with a 5 on it because having 5 of the other symbols would be a little too much. So instead, we just read whatever is on the side, whatever is in this area of the card. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 5, however many it is. Whenever we say, okay, I'm going to quest with Triton, I gain 3. I'm going to quest with Pluto, I gain 1. On the bottom portion of the card, we have the card's abilities. Any abilities that the cards have appear on the bottom part. Some abilities have a cost to use them. Abilities can be keywords or have a story name, which is used for referencing the ability, but otherwise isn't used for gameplay. Story name here is like Good Dog. Good Dog means nothing. That's just the name of the effect. You can say, I'm going to use Pluto's Good Dog effect to yada yada, but it doesn't have any specific things on the gameplay. And we talked a little bit about cost earlier. We have the cost, Pluto's effect, you have to exert to play that effect. And cards can have multiple effects. Such as Triton here, we have his Shift 6 ability, as well as his Imposing Presence ability. The next section is the flavor text. Flavor text isn't really used for gameplay. You can see Triton doesn't have any flavor text. Pluto has flavor text. This says, he just can't wait for new friends to arrive. That means nothing for gameplay. You can write whatever you want on the flavor text, and it doesn't really mean anything. It's just something to make the cards a little more fun. put a little personality in the cards. Now, on the bottom here, we have the ancillary information. That will be this section right here. And there's quite a few things that are down here. We have, of course, the artist name. There are many wonderful artists in Lorcana that draw all of the card art. This one was drawn by Jiahui Eva Gao, and that's listed there. You can reference that. They have their collector number, their set number, and their language as well. So this is number 18 of 204 in English in set 3, which is Into the Inklands. The language is there, the legal text is there for copyright information, so usually it'll just say Disney's Lorcana at Disney, but other times if there's other licenses being used or if Disney does not hold a full copyright, they will have those other copyrights as well. And then the rarity symbols. Let's check out what the rarity symbols mean. Rarity symbols have no impact on gameplay, but it has impacts on opening packs. We have in order common cards, uncommon cards, rare cards, super rare cards, legendary cards. We have enchanted cards, which I don't own, but I'll place a picture, and promotional cards. The first 6 that I listed can all be found in packs. Let's find an enchanted card for us. Let's do Clarabelle Light on Her Hooves. There we go. So the first 6 can be found in any sort of booster packs. Any sort of packs that you get from purchasing at a store, cards that you'll find in starter decks, they will all be one of those symbols. And they refer to how difficult it is to find the card. Every pack of Lorcana contains a set number of commons, uncommons, and then 2 slots with the possibility of being rare or higher, and then a foil slot, which can be any rarity. This card here, Triton, it's a little hard to see on the camera, but this is a foil card, which also has no bearing on the game other than just looking shiny. Now, promotional cards happen for a variety of reasons. This Nala promotional card, let's see if I can't find it on here. Nala Mischievous Cub. There we go. This promotional card can be given out for a variety of reasons. But generally, promotional cards with this symbol here are given out as prizing through your LGS. So this particular one is often given out as an introductory prize, saying, hey, thanks for coming to our locals for the first time, here is this card. Although other cards may be used as prizing for placing in a tournament or whatever they deem fit. Every LGS will be different, and while they receive guidelines from Lorcana, they have the freedom to distribute them as they please. You may see other symbols. This is a Dragonfire that's used as a promotional card for the Disney Lorcana challenges, and they have different symbols down here. And there may be other ones for other types of cards and promotional things, but these are the ones you're going to be seeing down here. Of course, as I said, they have no impact or bearing on game, so unless you are just looking to collect, they are essentially, not something to worry about in a regular game of Lorcana. 6.3 talks about actions. Actions are a type of card that can be played but can't be in play. An action is an action while being played. Otherwise, it's an action card. An action is defined by having action on the card's classification line. So we look at Night Howler Rage, that just says action. So we know it to be an action card. Actions are played from a player's hand, but they're not considered in play. An effect from an action doesn't enter the bag. So if I'm playing and I decide, okay, I'm going to spend 1, 2, 3 to play Night Howler's Rage, that doesn't enter the bag, it just happens. So I read the effect, I draw a card, and then chosen character gains Reckless during their next turn. So I choose a character to gain Reckless. Now 6.3.2 states effects. actions have effects rather than abilities. So while a card like Shenzi has two abilities, Night Howler Rage just has an effect. Now, some actions are songs. Let's take a look at that. Songs are actions that have a special rule in addition to the normal rules for actions. A song is defined by having action and song on the card classification line. Let's use our friend A Whole New World again. This has action and song. Therefore, it is a song. All songs allow the player to pay an alternate cost instead of their ink cost to play them. Being a song means, instead of paying the ink cost of this card, you can exert one of your characters and play with ink cost N or greater to play this card for free. This is called singing the song. So if we have our friend Shenzi, Shenzi has 5 ink cost. That means, assuming Shenzi is ready and able to be exerted, I can state, I am going to exert Shenzi to play A Whole New World, because A Whole New World has 5 ink cost, and Shenzi has 5 ink cost. Note that you're still able to, you don't have to sing a song. You can pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ink to also play the song as well. But it is an alternate condition to playing the song. Now, some songs have the keyword sing together, which functions similarly to the special rule. There will be a little more information on sing together, so for the sake of brevity, we'll go ahead and address that when we get there. And then the standard reminder text is, a character with cost N or more can exert to sing this song for free. Any effect that's triggered because of an action being played is placed in the bag and will resolve after the effects of the action are fully resolved. Let's take a look at the card Teeth and Ambition. This is an action and a song that can be sang with a character with 2 cost or more. So let's have our friend Shenzi sing that card. We'll put Shenzi on the board. Shenzi is ready. She's able to sing. And our opponent has a Cusco on the board. Cusco Wanted Llama, which says when this character is banished, you may draw a card. Okay, let's go ahead and have Shenzi sing our song. We'll go ahead and follow the rules, which state that I exert Shenzi to sing Teeth and Ambition. This card states that I deal 2 damage to a chosen character of mine, so I will deal 2 damage to Shenzi, to deal 2 damage to another chosen character. Let's put it on Cusco. We do our game state check. Shenzi has 6 willpower and 2 damage, so she stays. While Cusco, he has 2 willpower and 2 damage counters. Cusco is therefore banished. Cusco's effect will enter the bag. When this character is banished, you may draw a card. That will enter the bag, but does not resolve yet. If Teeth and Ambition had a secondary effect, like draw a card or do yada yada yada, that would resolve first. And then it is gone. Cusco effect will go off. The opponent will draw a card. Let's take a look at items. Right here, we have an item. This item we've talked about before, but I'll go ahead and bring it up again. This is Maui's Fishhook. Let's look at what Maui's Fishhook does. Maui's Fishhook is an item with a few different effects. Its Maui time is, if you have a character named Maui in play, you may use this item's Shapeshift ability for free. Shapeshift requires us to exert and to pay 2 to choose 1. Chosen character gains evasive until the start of your next turn, or chosen character gets +3 strength this turn. Let's look at what an item is. Items are a type of card that can be in play. An item is an item only while in the play zone. In all other zones, it's an item card. An item is defined by having item on the card's classification line. If an item has an ability, that ability can be used during the turn the item is played. So if I'm on my third turn, and I have 3 ink, I can say, okay, I'm going to play Maui's Fishhook. I'm going to use Maui's effect for Shapeshift to give Cusco plus 3 strength, assuming that I have the extra 2 ink to do that. And as long as I can pay all the relevant costs, I can play the card and have Cusco benefit from it. Of course, if I can't pay the cost, then I can't use the ability. And that's all for items. Items are very, very simple. I usually like to keep them on an edge of the board. It's not really great practice to have them mixed in along with your characters, because that can make the board a little bit confusing, because items have a different function. We always want to make sure it'll be on the card most of the time, but we want to make sure that if an item needs to be exerted, we exert that. We make sure it's not mixed in with other cards, and also not mixed in with our discard pile, that we're able to understand where they are and if they are utilized or not. And finally, in this section, we have locations. Here's a diagram of a location, but as we've been doing all day today, we're going to use our own diagram. Let's put back our friend, the tropical rainforest. We'll go ahead and get the information up here. This is a location. Locations are a type of card that can be in play. A location is a location while in the play zone. In all other zones, it's a location card. A location is defined by having location on the card's classification line, which we see right here. Locations are the only card types that are printed in landscape. As you can see, here is a non-location, here is a location. And this is because, in general practice, you'll want to play locations in a landscape manner. You want to make sure that they are not obstructed by items or by characters that are not in the locations. Much like a regular card, even though the diagram states that it's in a different location, it's in the same location, it's just the card is moved. So right up top, we will have our costs, but there are secondary costs. The move cost. A location has a move cost. That's the amount of ink needed to move a character to this location. So if I want to play Cusco and I want to move him into the location, I need to make sure I pay 1 ink in order to do so. He can't move there for free unless an effect states otherwise. 6.5.5, it talks about willpower, which is very much the same as willpower for characters. It is persistent, it accumulates over the course of the game. If a location is damage equal to or higher than its willpower, it is banished as a required action. And there is no strength on locations, as we discussed earlier. Now 6.5.6 talks about the lore value. A location may have a lore value, which is how much lore its player gains at the start of their turn during their set step. Locations do not quest, they just gain lore for existing during the set step. Note that location lore is a required thing to happen. Even if you forget about it, it is something that still needs to be tracked. So make sure you're remembering when you're playing the game that no matter what happens during the set step, you gain the amount of lore that is on the card. And note that not every location has lore. A lot of them, like if I can look through my collection here, this location, Atlantica, let's pull it up on here, Concert Hall, this has no lore. So it's fine, it doesn't do anything. But Tropical Rainforest does have lore, so make sure to apply that. 6.5.7 is the ability. If the location has an ability, that ability can be used during the turn the location is played. So, going back to Tropical Rainforest, I slap down a Tropical Rainforest, immediately the effect occurs, opposing damaged characters gain Reckless. Immediately, Cusco is now Reckless. Going down to our next section, we finish up. And that is all about locations. I'm going to give a few more notes about locations that are not mentioned there, but I think are still important to have nonetheless. Just giving a little refresher about location things. Especially if you're looking through the video, if you're not watching the full thing, which is very long, so I understand that. But it is good to have a little reminder about how locations work with characters. Characters can move into locations. I pay one to put Cusco into the tropical rainforest. If you have multiple locations, you're able to move between locations if you pay the cost. I'm going to pay 2 to move Cusco into Atlantica. I'm going to pay 1 to move Cusco into tropical rainforest. Whatever reason you have for that, some cards may have a benefit from moving or leaving the location. So you may want to do that, but always keep that in mind. Note that a character cannot not be in a location if they were in it. A character can only go back to a state of not being in a location if that location is banished. Additionally, characters are not connected to locations in terms of damage. If a location takes a bunch of damage, let's say this will take 8 damage, it is banished. Cusco is not banished with it. Cusco just is now no longer in a location. There is no limit to the number of locations you can have, and there is no limit to the amount of characters you can have in a location. And that is chapter 5 and 6. Since we talked about the different cards, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, I do want to talk a little bit about something that is not discussed in the rules, but is good play behavior nonetheless. And that is where the cards are placed. There are no official rules about the specific locations of where things are placed. You can have your setup in any way you like. Like, let me pull out Puppy Deck, one of my favorite decks to play. We'll go ahead and give it a good shuffle. Now I can place my deck anywhere on the play area. So I can put my deck here. I can put it here. I can put it here or here, anywhere, as long as it is clear. I'll draw my cards. We'll do our stuff. Now, the way that we have kind of developed playing cards is something like this. And official playmats will have this as well, but it is not codified in the comprehensive rules. Your characters will generally be on the top part of the playmat. Locations will generally be under that. If a character is in a location, they will be on top of the location. If they are not in a location, it's good practice to make sure that they are not on top of anything. So if I have these 3 characters and no locations, I may choose to place the board like this, so that there is no confusion as to who is in a location. If I want to move a character to a location, I'll simply move the character as such. And this will indicate that these are in 2 separate locations. Or if I have 1, 1, and 0, I may do something like this. Now, below that is usually where the inkwell goes. You can set this up. I like to do it in a stack so I can count the cards. Sometimes I'll fan them out like this if I have an opponent that really wants to know how many ink I have. But some others will have it in certain specific piles, so if their effects they know they want to do like 4 and 2 and 2, they may have it like this and exert as such, or rearrange to exert. Generally, items are placed in a corner of the playmat. I have my screen a little bit crumped in, so we'll assume that this is around the corner of the playmat. They'll be separate from the play area, so you can distinctly tell that they are not characters. You want to make sure that the opponent is able to see them. It's generally bad practice to have items somewhere far away where they're not really seen, or locations, or even other characters for that matter. Having something like this is not really good practice, because as a player, I can easily forget about these things. And I'll have an incorrect idea of what the board state looks like, not because I'm being lazy, but because things are not in clean locations. So it's always good to make sure you place these cards in a way that people can identify where they are and can identify like things together. Of course, actions, they don't have a spot in the field, so we just play them. I'll usually hold them out, or if I'm singing it, I will demonstrate that this is the card that is singing it. I will hold it to my opponent so they can read the card, and then once it is done, it goes in the discard pile, which also can technically be anywhere, but generally I like to have it right above the deck. Some people have it the opposite way, where it's below the deck if they like to, draw a little further. There's a little more information actually about decks and whatnot, so we'll talk about that, like the discard pile. So we'll talk about that when we get there, but we do know that we want to make sure we have it distinct. So I want to avoid something like this. Let's say a character's there, because a song we know is not going to be there, but let's say a character's here, and we're like, okay, well, what? How many characters do we have on board? Something like that. So you want to make sure we're adding good distance and able to bring the information around and have the right cards in all the right places. And that should be all for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure speaking on these comprehensive rules. As always, feel free to criticize, comment, critique. As I said, this is a consistently growing thing, and I know that there are many people with, outstanding understanding of the rules, and I'd love to learn from that, but I'd love to contribute whatever I can to the game's understanding of the rules. So we've got a few more chapters to go, so we'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you so much.